I'm going to say a few words to get us going. Welcome, everybody. This is a live broadcast from Bell House in Dulwich, South London, and my name is Alison Green. And myself and the artist Gaia Redgrave are going to be talking here today about her participation in the exhibition called Ways of Seeing Green that's up now last weekend and this weekend at this wonderful organization here. So a couple things before we get going. Yeah, Gaia's mentioned already that we're recording this. In addition, we want to say that this is a safe space and it's a brave space where we welcome considered and considerate conversation about the kind of topics that we want to discuss today, which include Gaia's practice, the experience of being a neurodivergent artist, questions of accessibility in exhibition spaces and art spaces, Gaia's idea about rewilding and what that means for her practice and so on. We're going to talk, Gaia and I have decided on a couple of ways of entering her work and talking about it. So she and I are going to talk for maybe 30 minutes or so, and then would welcome questions. You can pose them in the chat box or speak. And we'd really welcome that, interventions and questions. And probably all in total will wrap up within an hour. Yeah, that's that right. So we'll not go more than an hour. So first, before I wanted to just explain this, that Gaia is in West Wales. I'm in South London. And this is the way that we have been working together to bring Gaia's work to this exhibition. So I'm a curator, Gaia's an artist. We met through social media, but since then have been forging a really, really interesting conversation that's kind of come to fruition in Gaia's work being included in this exhibition project I'm working on. And we really felt that it was really interesting to have this conversation in the context of the exhibition, in part as a way of being able to bring Gaia into, so to speak, into the exhibition space, not only through her work, but through her voice and her agency. And that's sort of the purpose of using Zoom to kind of bridge the distance and share this conversation that she and I have been having more broadly. So I'd like to start just, so Gaia, will you talk in first about the two works that we're showing here, Earth Song, the video, and Ridded, if I'm pronouncing it correctly.
Shall we go through a pronunciation first?
Please, please.
It's Rhyddid. So Rhyddid, which is a Welsh word that means freedom, and it's the name of our house. So I might as well speak about that one first then. Rhyddid is, as I was going to say, as you can see, people in the gallery and people that have been looking at social media can see it. It's a play quilt, and it is specifically to encourage people to play in a gallery setting. We don't, oh, it's come off completely the wheel now. Oh. It has, yeah, the object is to encourage people to play in a gallery setting and to encourage people to think about playing more in their lives. But it also has an environmental aspect to it as well, and it comments about disability as well. On the quilt is stitched is the footprint of our house and our garden, our safe space through the pandemic. So being disabled and vulnerable from the point of view of my health, we are still shielding. So over 2 years on now, this is our safe space. So with the quilt, there's our safe space on there. The quilt is repaired. So through the pandemic, it's been very difficult, obviously, for everybody. And it's brought up things to question about ourselves and what we want our lives to be, and healing aspects of ourselves. So repairing the quilt is, in a physical form, mirroring that way. It's brought about, the pandemic has brought about unusual things from the point of view, this may sound really odd, but one of the first things that I decided at the beginning of the pandemic, after panic buying a hatchet, of course, because that's what everybody does, I realized that actually I am not going to buy any disposable pens anymore, which is probably an odd thing to think at the beginning of a pandemic, but it made me acutely aware of my environment, how I affect it and how it affects me. The need to grow things, the need to grow my own food and have agency over that rather than be dependent on the outside world. In reality, we have had to have everything ordered in. So everything that we need comes in a box to our space, because we haven't been into a shop or anywhere other than the beach at midnight or on very, very quiet days since a week before this began. So I thought, I'll start making things out of boxes. I've got a lot of materials there. So in the spirit of play, which I've found is very, very important to me as the foundation of my practice, I started making things from my childhood. Alison picked up the little dog earlier, as the rocking horse. Sorry, Alison, I should have prompted you on that one. Picked up little dog earlier, and it is actually a replica, if you can call it a replica, I don't know if that's the right word, of the Fisher-Price dog, pull-along dog that I used to play with as a child. So it takes me back to that carefree time when I could just play as a child and not think about what was going on around me. Rocking horses now are incredibly important as a neurodivergent person. So we might speak about that a little bit later. So the idea is that you cross the boundary of the wall of the room, which is taped on the floor. And as an adult, you pluck up the courage to sit on the floor, lie on the floor and play with this activity quilt, which is big enough for you. So that's the idea of Rethid, and freedom to play. And what are the words on it? Play is an expression of freedom and a radical act of kindness for yourself. I truly believe.
Could when you first told me this story and you've just now shared it again, I was really both moved and intrigued by your adaptation to these limitations, Gaia. So you talked about having to kind of really radically change your life in the start of the pandemic in order to protect yourself and your health, limiting your interaction to a very, very small number of people in your life, and and not, limiting yourself to having to limit yourself to a very specific place, and moving through keeping yourself away from other people and so on. But you've named the piece freedom, so it just intrigues me a bit about the relationship between like limitation and freedom. And because we've heard so many stories of the kind of difficulties and the, you might even say sort of damage that people have experienced during COVID. I wondered, how have you kind of transformed that into something which seems quite empowering and optimistic?
We decided very early on that to get through this, we needed to build a life that wouldn't necessarily mean that we ever have to come into contact with people again. We don't know for certainty if that would ever be possible, and we still don't know. So to sit and wait for that and put our life on hold, that would have been mentally destroying. We couldn't do it. Whereas if we have a certain amount of control over our lives by the way we build things in, that we can have a future, we can have a wonderful future in case we can't see other people. So that is our freedom. We've got a freedom of choice as to how we respond to this. We may not be able to go out and see people at the moment. We don't know if we will. I'm hoping we will. That would be fantastic. But at the moment, we're building a life in a different way, just in case. It's preservation of mental health.
Yeah. So maybe if you could then put how your work as an artist or your creative practice, how that fits in here. And that could lead us to talk to how you and I have made arrangements so that you could be part of this exhibition in a meaningful way. Yeah.
Well, interestingly, I say interestingly, it's not a coincidence at all. It's part of the big plan. I am towards the end now of a research and development project that's funded by Arts Council Wales. And the purpose of that was to develop my practice in a way that I don't need to come into contact with people, but primarily that nurtures me as a neurodivergent artist. So all my sensory needs as a neurodivergent person are the foundation of my arts practice. So it nurtures my well-being. And I can't rightly remember what you asked me that. Did that answer the question, or was I leading to what you were asking?
No, I think that's such an important piece of it to, in a way, just it's a kind of curiosity around what that actually means to kind of reconstruct your life around your needs and around the way that you can thrive, right? Within.
I mean, my practice has changed dramatically since doing the R&D and since the pandemic started, because I used to do a lot of live performance, and the type of live performance I did came into contact with a lot of people. Obviously, that's not possible now. Now I could adapt that so I don't come into contact with people, but it was an opportunity to really pull things apart and look at how my practice can support me, because being a neurodivergent artist, there are so many barriers. So I needed to find ways around that. And it's changed really dramatically to the point of view that it's all sensory based, my work. It includes a lot of weaving, a lot of making, so physically making, and a fair amount of sound work is now coming into it as well. I still am interested in creating an environment that people can experience, but it's an environment that people experience elsewhere as opposed to a space that I'm in.
Yeah, okay, so that's really nice. I want to explain that there are two works by Gaia in the show. So there's this work which I'm sitting on. Which I'm not going to try to pronounce the name of. And then there is a video work in another room, and maybe I'll walk in a few minutes over there to take us there. But and that work is called Earth Song. And I think maybe it's really interesting to me from the kind of position of being the organizer of it, to think about how we were able to work together to think about what work would be relevant for this show. And it's worth saying that you made a work for the show, but also sort of how we got them here. The kind of almost like the operations, the practicalities of how you kind of realize these projects. I think these things are interesting. It's like that because they feel connected with us.
I do, and I think it's a really important experiment that we've done as well, because prior to the pandemic, there were so many doors closed, not just to me, but to many disabled artists. So I have physical disabilities as well as being neurodivergent, and some people count neurodivergency as a disability, some don't. But just to clarify my position, and Alison, you've really embraced working with a new process to enable a level playing field, which is fantastic. It's been a lot of emails back and forwards and photographs backwards and forwards, hasn't there?
Yeah. Well, and vice versa, I've learned a lot from you as well. So I think it was, it's been a really interesting way of thinking about working methods. And so not bringing in, say, diversity or inclusion or accessibility as an afterthought, but really having it there from the beginning. So I really appreciate the way you've educated me and how that's kind of contributed to how we've learned to work together. So one thing to mention is, again, the practical side of putting exhibitions together. With a video work, it's so easy. You just send it via, we used WeTransfer, so a file sharing device. There's no physical transportation. It's a digital transportation of a work, and then I just sourced a video screen and a media player here, and then for the rooted
for the playmat.
It was beautiful. It arrived in a relatively small box, packed together beautifully, and then instructions to install it. And so there was a sort of, let's say, a sort of facilitation of being able to stand in for maybe what the artist, what Gaia would have decided if she had been able to show it. And I'll share that I think we also learned about it, sort of a back and forth, maybe a checking in. I felt that was happening throughout, checking that we were thinking the same things, checking about things as they emerged. For example, when the wheel of the dog was broken last weekend by a enthusiastic young one, what Gaia's response to that, what we should do in relationship to that. So I think it's been a great experience of collaboration, I would say.
I think the most important thing for me, Alison, is that you were open. Things didn't have to be done the way they've always been. They didn't have to be done in traditional manner. You were totally open. So it was done from a culture of care, a point of kindness, which is what I instill in my practice and in my consultancy as well. And it just seemed to unfold as a natural process rather than having to be forced or, like you say, having to be inclusive. We just did it because it was the right thing and the easy thing to do. It was simple, and it should just be simple. It should have always have been simple prior to the pandemic, but it wasn't. So it's important that we keep this up and we demonstrate this to other curators and other artists. So other disabled artists and people that can't necessarily be in the space can show their work and not be marginalized as people have been in the past and still are in many places in many ways.
So maybe that leads to some of the advocacy work you do or with exhibitions, cultural organizations, exhibition spaces, and so on. And I think, to me, it's really important to talk about the barriers that different people face for being able to participate, and whether that's in, from the perspective of being a practicing artist or being able to come and see exhibitions. If there was a few examples that you could share so that we could be educated, I would really appreciate talking about that.
I'll give you a few examples of things that I've experienced as an artist, but also as a visitor. I have, as many people who are autistic, my diagnosis is ASD, autistic spectrum disorder. And I have quite profound sensory processing difficulties with that. So sounds, smells, movement, etc., caused me quite a lot of distress, very difficult to cope with, to the point that I actually can lose a few days if there is too much input on that level. So if you think about going into a gallery space, the environment, the sound echoes, it's really harsh. So if you've got a number of people in that space talking, I cannot differentiate between what people are saying, and the sound input is absolutely exhausting. It's not a space that I can be. I would be wearing earplugs and I would only be there for a very short period of time, and I certainly wouldn't be able to communicate with somebody very easily. And again, as a visitor, there might be a film in the space, so there's the sound input, or it might be, if we go to a private view, there might be food and drink, so there's the smell issue as well as the volume, and there's also somebody might be wearing strong perfume, and if I smell that strong perfume, not if I smell, but if I smell the strong perfume, it can have quite a serious effect on me. My muscles can literally switch off. I will slur my speech, and in worst case scenarios, I won't be able to walk, and my husband will need to get my wheelchair for me. So you can see that an environment external to the place that I can control can be very, very difficult. So that's just one thing. And then you're just completely wiped out for a few days after that. But there's an expectation to be in the gallery space. There's an expectation of networking, of going to private views, of being seen. And that's not something as a neurodivergent artist I can do, and many neurodivergent artists can't. There's been numerous times when I've applied for opportunities and people have loved my work, but I haven't been able to take part because the opportunity's been upstairs and I haven't been able to get upstairs. And it's been as blatant as that. There has been funding opportunities that it's necessary to network with people and find people to work with. And as a neurodivergent person, it takes a lot of time to trust somebody else and to develop that relationship to see if you can work with somebody. So those funding, that funding doesn't work. But it's mainly expectations and filling in application forms, funding application forms. So that there is a lot of barriers that people don't understand. Autism is very misunderstood. It's people know about the medical model of autism, the difficulties, the fact that we might come across as awkward. It's seen that we don't like being social. That's not necessarily true. It's just got to be the right people and in the right environment. There needs to be wider knowledge of what actually autism is and how it presents, as opposed to, like I say, the medical model, all the difficulties, all the can'ts, because there's a lot of cans. There certainly is a lot of cans.
I was really moved by the video work, or I guess it was a video of a performance that you made. That was one of my entries into your work. So since I've forgotten the title, maybe you could share the title and describe this work where you turn these issues into a work of art. I think this one was pre-COVID.
Yeah, there's Crucify, and oh my goodness, what's the other one? Kindness. Sorry, forgetting the names of my own work. Do you mean Crucify with the stairs?
Yeah.
Ah, right, yeah. Crucify was a response to not being able to access art spaces. Artists often use spaces that are very cheap to rent, that nobody wants, and up a lot of stairs and out the way. That's great, no problem from that point of view. However, when you're excluded, it can be very difficult. My response has often been, well, I can get in like this, I can do this, this is how we can overcome this. But there were still closed doors. So I made a film. There was a new art space, temporary art space opening in Coventry. And it was the old Evening Telegraph newspaper building. They'd vacated the building, and it was going to be an art space for, I think it was a year. It was a good number of months, but I think it was a year. And the lifts weren't working, so I couldn't get up the stairs. And yeah, I wanted to use this space. So I spoke to another artist who I know and have collaborated with before, and proposed a performance where he carried me up the stairs. It was really quite interesting because other people were in the building not knowing what we were doing, so there was their response as part of it. And the film is Alex carrying me up several flights of stairs, down a corridor, and into what would have been the boardroom, where I'm then laying out in a crucifix, because it would literally have crucified me from an energy and physical point of view to get up those stairs. And then after that, he carried me back down the stairs, and he carried me in a way that I looked lifeless, looked like a rag doll, completely lifeless, and my feet are dragging on the steps and catching on the steps. And interestingly enough, just by coincidence, there was a couple of people in the building that while we were doing that, were just wanted to go downstairs past us, completely ignored the fact that this person was carrying somebody down the stairs like that. No concern as to that person's well-being, nothing, completely ignored, which is often what happens. So the film is just basically a depiction as to how disabled people and disabled artists are marginalized, and there are expectations of the norm, expectations that people can climb stairs and get into spaces, and that's what happens, that's the norm, but it's just completely ignored quite often that some of us can't.
And while I'm listening to you, I might, in the next one, I might grab the web domain of your website and share it in the chat for other people. I want to ask you another question, and then I think I might do a little bit of a walkthrough through this exhibition so people can see the context. And then I think I'd like to walk over to the other space where Ursong is shown.
Yeah.
But before that, I've got one more topic I want to talk to you about, and it's this concept of rewilding. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Gaia. You just put your website in.
I have. The films, both films, Crucify and my goodness,
Kindness.
I've got a block on that.
Kindness.
Kindness, yeah. I don't know why I've got a block on that at the moment. Are both on my website, and Kindness actually explains the experience of somebody who is has sensory processing difficulties in the gallery space. So that's quite interesting as well.
So could you talk about rewilding, what this means to you, how, and maybe how it plays out in your work?
Yeah, rewilding for me, Rewilding the Artist is the name of my research and development project. Rewilding is known in the wider world as taking the land back to nature, really connecting back. But it can be, the word rewilding can be used in many different contexts. So for me, Rewilding the Artist is about taking me back, returning to myself and returning to my authentic self and just being me, and taking that further to other people. It's about encouraging people to play and be themselves, connect to the land and know who you are. There is so much around us. The world is so busy and we're bombarded with all kinds of things. We forget who we are. We forget the simplicity of play. We forget the beauty of simple things and just being in nature. And yeah, that to me is what rewilding is, being our authentic self.
And I wanted to share one of the things that really I got interested in when I was looking at your website and thinking about the range of your practice is some ways in which you kind of explore ways of communicating that. So I was really attracted to some of the visualizations you made, or the way that rewilding was expressed through writing, as well as through some of the physical works or the video work. So I think it's interesting to think about the entirety of your practice and how that it feels like it's a kind of exploration that you're engaged with, or maybe it's a process, or maybe it's it's like an intention that you're discovering what that means. Yeah,
I think it's all of them. It's an experiential process, definitely. It's I do what feels right in my body. I do what aligns with my truth and how I feel about things. It's not going to be the same for everybody. Everybody has to go through their own experiential process to find out who they are. And as somebody who's neurodivergent and late diagnosed, it's all the more important because you mask the whole of your life, and then you get your diagnosis and you think, so who am I? Because you copy other people to fit in. So I was little bits of everybody else, but there was none of me left. So it was important to find out who I was and what I enjoyed doing and testing things out. Do I enjoy this? Is this me or is this somebody else? And there was a lot of questioning going on. And that's the process that I've employed within my research and development as well. So rather than just solely in my personal life, it's drawing everything together as one. So I'm not all separated into different parts. It's a totally integrated practice.
Amazing. Okay.
Fun.
I'm gonna maybe stand up, possibly with some difficulty. My knees, my knees.
When we work together again, do you want me to make something a little bit higher up, or something that involves a chair, or?
Possibly. So for this Zoom audience and also for future audience, I'm just going to share the context in which Gaia's work is. So this is this beautiful room at Bell House. It's on the ground floor. Maybe I'll start with the windows looking out over the front drive. And there's Gaia's work, which is here on the floor. In the middle of the room, is surrounded by artworks by 3 other people. This is a photograph, large-scale photograph by a photographer named Michael Pierce Harvey. And the works that have been behind me while I've been speaking are 2 sculptures by the artist Fiona Hingston. And lastly, a display by a graphic designer named Elena Etter. And I'm going to zoom in because hers is quite busy and a lot of information. It's a project looking at the kind of unsustainability of smartphones. And it's an information design project, a kind of communication design project. And so now what I'm going to do is just walk to the other part of this space. This is through a little corridor. And I'm going to just show everybody the video work by Gaia that's also here. Hi. Interacting with people who don't know what's going on. So here we have.
There we are.
There. So lots of people looking. And just to reiterate, we're in a 18th century Georgian pile of bricks, an enormous house. So there's sort of this really interesting juxtaposition between contemporary art and a very old building that has a very strong character.
If anybody wants to watch a song,
I'm back. So maybe we should, Gaia, if we don't see if anybody would like to ask a question or make an intervention.
Can I just say, Alison, if anybody wants to watch a song, it's on my YouTube channel. I don't think there's a link currently from my website, actually. There needs to be. But if you search for Gaia Redgrave on YouTube, you'll find Earth Song on there, and also a collaborative Earth Song as well to listen to. So yeah, if people do want to see it.
Thanks. Yeah, I hope I didn't move too quickly through there. It was, I'm new to this. the video, the Zoom tour guide. I think I probably need to slow down, right?
I think you're doing all right, Alison. I think you're doing all right. We need to put a manual together for other curators, don't we?
Yeah, remote curating. I mean, we're a relatively small group here. I just wondered if anybody would like to ask a question or me or of Gaia.
I think I will need to unmute people to do so.
Okay.
Oh no, I just need to ask them, I think. Well, let's see if somebody can unmute and then we'll find out, won't we?
Or you could pose a question in the chat box and we can just read it out. Or Gaia, is there anything that we haven't touched on that you'd like to talk about?
We touched on earlier about consultancy work. And accessibility, we were talking about accessibility and the fact that when we have been working together, it's from what I found important is kindness and openness. I think with working with disabled artists and any artists that have been marginalised, it's important to work from a point of view of good faith. So by that I mean that it is easy for somebody to say something that could be ill-informed or offensive, but it is an opportunity to explore and reflect and creatively work through that so people can understand better. Because you can only understand a lived experience if it's your lived experience. And also work from a point of view of radical kindness. We've spoken about kindness, but I call it radical kindness because unfortunately it doesn't always happen. And from a point of view of celebrating and enhancing autistic joy, because we regularly get really excited and really involved in things in a different way to people who don't have a diagnosis of autism. And it'd be nice to be able to share that rather than the medical model of what we can't do, what we struggle with. Because when it comes to disability, I subscribe to the social model of disability. So barriers are put in place by society. And with openness and a culture of care and kindness, nothing's insurmountable. We can do anything. It just needs that that kindness. And often my husband uses this statement, and somebody said it to us, it's just about being a nice person. Simple.
Yeah, well, I have actually really appreciated your generosity, which has been really remarkable throughout the way we've interacted, Gaia. So I think you're doing what you say and maybe helping elicit it in other people as well. And I guess from my own part, I suppose I'm coming relatively recently to understanding what's really meant by accessibility, for example, or the social model of disability, in which, as I understand it, it's rather than thinking about what the differently able person is not able to do, to thinking about changing our environment so that those barriers are taken away for everybody, rather than seeing the differently able person as an exception, seeing those barriers as things that can help everybody's life.
And it's about meeting in the middle as well. It's not us saying, well, you've got to do everything and put that in place. It's about meeting in the middle. Feel very strongly about that it's everybody's responsibility, and then everybody can thrive. That's important.
So maybe I'll just inflect this a little bit, because like we're doing this talk on Zoom, and in some regards this is a tool that we all learn to use quite quickly, and explore and sort of learn, to kind of really explore it as a tool during the pandemic, which separated us and made us radically change how we go about our business. You're welcome to come in, please. Yeah, I'm just having a conversation with the artist of this work, so you can listen in. But in this case, to be able to kind of, I feel very strongly we're trying to bring you into this space, even when physically you're not able to travel to be here. And so it's both real, but also it's a symbol, right, of the intention to find other ways to make this relationship or this experience work. And you talked about early on when you and I first were talking, you were saying that during the pandemic, it was kind of really amazing how you felt, in fact, more connected in some regards than ever before. Like you're, that artists who say had accessibility issues were experiencing culture in a more expanded way because so much material was put online. And then, of course, as we've been moving out of lockdowns, those channels are now shifting and many of them closing down again. So, I mean,
I'm forever asking the question, is the event hybrid? how can you how will it be accessible from a distance? So I'm finding that's now the question, rather than prior to the pandemic, how do you welcome disabled artists into your space? It's sort of, well, how can it be hybrid? How can we make changes? Because it's not just people that are disabled. It might be people that the other side of the world. It might be somebody who can't afford to travel to the location. But on the flip side of that, we've also got to be mindful of people that live in a very rural location that may not have the internet access. We're very lucky. We're on 4G. We do live very rurally, and our 4G is very good. However, not everybody has that luxury. So it's about being mindful of all different people, and just making things as accessible as possible. And the way we do that is being open to possibility. We're creative people. I do say this quite often, but I quite like it. At the beginning of the pandemic, I was asked, in fact, it was prior to the pandemic, I was asked to talk at an event, Unlimited Connects Wales, about curating disabled artists. And it was supposed to be in a physical space, but it was arranged that I would do it at a distance. Simply because of my location. I was a long way away where it was going to be. And then because of the pandemic, everything was put online, which made it, for me, so much easier anyway, because I didn't feel different. I didn't feel a nuisance because it was happening anyway. And I didn't feel sidelined, even though they were including me. However, what I felt very strongly about was the fact that this had been made more accessible because of the pandemic. So I am quoted very often for saying the only thing that at that time that has created anywhere near a level playing field for disabled artists is a world pandemic. And that's because, not because people wanted to include us as disabled artists, but because everybody else wanted it as business as usual. And there was a few open mouths, a few jaws did drop. It's got to be said. Sometimes things need to be said for a, oh, right, okay. Yeah, we have been doing that. We need to do things differently.
There was a phrase, maybe I shared it with you before, that I thought spoke a bit to this. So some people said during COVID, we're all in the same boat. And the answer to that is saying, no, we're in different boats on the same ocean.
Yeah, I think at the beginning of it, we felt like we were in a little rowing boat, that half of the slats were missing. There was a lot of holes and we didn't have a bucket. But we've done a lot of furious patching and we've got quite a nice little yacht now. Thank you very much. I like that analogy though.
Cool. Well, maybe I'd just ask whether anybody has a question, and maybe if not, we should think about wrapping up. We've been going for almost an hour.
We have.
I'm gonna maybe call out one person who I know in the room. Jono, do you have any questions? Unless there's another Jono in the world, other than the one who's my husband.
Ah! It sounds like Jono might have disappeared, or
yeah.
he's a different
Oh,
person.
he's pretending to be here. Listen, it's been such a pleasure to talk to you. One aspect of this that maybe hasn't, we're testing this out. It's a new thing. It's been not so easy here to try to bring the physical people in, because of course I'm only showing this on a little laptop. So perhaps next time I do this, I should be projecting it onto the wall. So when people come in, bam, they really see this.
That would be great. Or maybe next time we perfect the Instagram version, which really didn't work last week, did it?
Wow, I'm not ready. I'm not ready for that yet, but I'd like to try it. Yeah.
Oh, there's another message. Let me just see what that is. Thank you both. It's been great. Thank you, everybody. I would like to thank you, Alison, as well, for actually having the vision and the openness to do this, because ultimately this is the first step for really making a difference. Oh, there's somebody else just arrived. Really making a difference to other people. So I really want to thank you for that. It's important.
Cool. It's been such a pleasure to get to know you, Gaia. So thank you for coming on board this project.
Thank you. And thank you to everybody coming.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Zen. And now we've got somebody who's only just arrived.
Lindsay looks mortified. I know, Lindsay.
You're late.
I thought it was 5 o'clock. So sorry.
That's okay. I've got the recording. Don't worry.
Okay.
Lindsay, welcome. Maybe I'll just do one last tour of the exhibition. Oh no, my feet have gone to sleep. I don't know if I can stand up. So here I'm at Bell House, and this is Gaia's work. Sorry, it's just my laptop.
Yeah, definitely, Laura. Yeah, definitely. I'll read this out. I second that. She says, reminding of the power of care and how its presence can make things and its absence can break things. Yeah, totally. Thank you.
Power of care. Oh, that's so beautiful, Laura. Thank you for that. Okay. So should we say goodbye?
Yeah, let's say goodbye. Let's say goodbye. You don't have to disappear.
Sorry, I'm so sorry,
Lindsay.
Only just arrived. We will share the recording with you. Okay.
We will.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay. Bye.
Bye, Gaia.
Bye.